crack on. My wife, if she was here, she'd be bloody amused to see that I hadn't got time even to get sidetracked to tell jokes. Anyway, so 16 years of implementing a lucerne grazing system on Bog Roy and the reflective performance of that. I've got 30 seconds a year, so I'll crack on, but I'd firstly just like to acknowledge the input of Derek Moot and Pete Anderson in bringing this together, and Lisa, who's a really good bullshit meter. Just some nuts and bolts of Bog Roy. I assume you all can read, so I won't just read them out repetitively to you, but the point I want to draw here is that we're only at 420 mil rainfall, if you just bear that in mind, and so that's why the obvious conclusion that lucerne was the best pasture species for us. And then, but one of the others, we have areas of high performing dryland lucerne, but also high performing irrigation now. But what we didn't want to forget about was that 41% of improved hill country, which is still a really good engine room, and totally the principle's the same with our guys up there in Gisborne, Tim and Mike, on that we need to have clovers growing there. So it really leads on to how best do we do that, and how best we use the areas to enhance each other of the property and create a vacuum off that hill country, which is really needs every break it can get. This is just a picture down a fence line, the boundary fence, but which I don't need to name the other boundary. But anyway, that's home on the right there, and it's relatively dry country there, but it shows what we can do if we do look after it, and the enhanced cover on it, which leads us to the conclusion, was basically that we need to have as good a legume-based pastures over the whole property as possible, and how do we go about doing that, and what sort of impact that'll have on our stock performance, which made me realise that, well, I guess we conducted a trial, but we did it on a whole property basis. So we kind of leapt with both feet. With this legume dominant pastures, and namely dryland lucerne, it's been a real catalyst to change, has been the dryland lucerne, and under the guidance of Derek when we started into that some years ago now, or 16 to be exact, but and bringing those ewes down off the hill and having that to go on to when it was at peak growth around November, which is when those little resident clovers we discovered we had were really struggling and wanting to set seed, go to flower, set seed and do their reproductive cycle, so it all started working in synergy. It was pretty common sense to bring them off the hill. We've also changed our system around. It used to be that the ewes and lambs would come down off the hill and get weaned onto what we called lamb tucker or weaning tucker, but that's, and it was kind of like going from North Otago to the Waikato for them, which was quite a change. So now it's changed a bit that we get down off that hill pretty much as soon as we can start shuffling things, rotate them around, and the only change for the lamb is that mum gets taken away. And as soon as the lamb's able to eat it actually has the most readily available tucker for it there in high protein. And this is what it can look like on the hill, and when we do or are successful with this, and the base of that pasture that you see there is actually Horatium, which was an invasive weed you all probably know about. Horatium came in about largely due to set stocking, which was not only due to sheep but also due to really high rabbit numbers back in the day. Which leads us into stock care. Stock care, Pete Anderson is a founder of Stock Care, which is a measuring and monitoring program drawn up by vets and guided by a vet throughout the year. And kind of my closest analogy is it's like spreading your year out on the table, really, and then going ahead and you monitor as we go. But then if something goes right, then we can enhance that or carry on down that track and compound that performance. Or if something doesn't go so well, then we've got a ways of looking back on it and records to see what might have caused that as well. Really, the three key areas in stock improvement has been the ewe flock performance, which is increased lambs weaned or kilograms of lamb weaned. I kind of like to talk about kilograms. Tom Fraser was one actually pulled me up on that. He said you shouldn't talk per head, you should talk per kilo, because that's what you get paid in, and unless you're selling to store, that's quite right. And then also the lamb finishing performance, so once the lambs are off the ewes, how well and how fast they grow, and which can decrease your days to sale. And then the other factor in there is cattle production, which I'll touch on a bit later on, which has leads to increased calf weight, more product sold. Can you stop the hot lorry, please? I'm having trouble with the clicker. Can you flip that on? Yes. Beauty, there we go. This is one of my favourite graphs, which leads into kilograms or a tonne of lamb weaned per year. And that old clicker's giving me a bit of jip because of the few figures should be springing up there. But anyway, on the left-hand side, you see 2008, that's kind of where we were conventionally. And then the next lift as we come up and the U numbers track up is implementing a dryland lucerne grazing system and more dryland lucerne coming into play. And then along there about 2016 we got a couple of pivots up and underway, and then production kept coming up and U numbers came up relatively significantly. Got a big red arrow there, which is kind of something I don't like to talk about, but I will, which is foot rot. And we got hit quite hard in our flock with foot rot, and those of you who know merinos know that they're very susceptible to it and it can have some quite cataclysmic effect. But one of the interesting factors there, the little blue dots or squares are the hoggets, and that's the lambs produced by hoggets. And interesting enough to have Tim Rhodes in the audience, he might be still there, he might have buggered off to have a smoke. He came and judged the national ewe hogget competition at home, and it's a number of years ago now, and they said, what's one of your goals? And so one of the goals would be to be mating our ewe hoggets, and which we're pretty pleased to be mating sort of 50 to 70% roughly a year now. We did drop it out that next year after the foot rot because we really had to all hands on deck concentrating on that. We didn't have the time to pay them the attention we felt, but those little tackers came into play, and I'm just so proud of them because, they're like your kids, but they came into play and took up the slack right when I was getting really kicked in the guts financially and emotionally, and they came through with their wee lambs, and you just treat them like gold when they're walking around in front of you with the lamb. So it sure as heck doesn't let you drop your knitting when they're striding. It's almost like they're looking over their shoulder saying, it's right mate, I've got your back. Which leads us on to the lambing percentage here, and that's how we get the tonnage obviously, which we've increased that up from 118% in 2012 to 138% on a flock average. The real lift really has come out of Tudus, which were the maiden ewes, which they are really now, and it took a heck of a lot to get them up above 100%. I remember one year, it's probably around that 2014, we even counted a couple of pet lambs to try and get them up to 100%. We couldn't quite, so got them to 99. But then once we finally got over that 100, they really started stepping away. So it was kind of like you put in a lot of work and a lot of work and a lot of work and just stick with the process, and then finally the results come through. So it's kind of that analogy can be run through to a whole lot of things in life, I guess. But crikey, now let's pick her up a bit. The flock average in scanning has picked up from 155 to 170%. Once again, the Tudus have been the ones that have really picked their game up there. And this is largely reflected back through the ewe mating weights. Rule of thumb there, roughly we've picked up 15 kilos a head on the Tudus and about 10 kilo a head on the mixed age. This is largely done by when a ewe lamb starts her life, when we cull them in early March, they're given an EID tag and all put through the weigh crate, and then the games begin then. And with those little black dots obviously are the targets that we set down with Pete, and we regularly measure, weigh them and make sure that they're hitting their targets. So it really gives you a focus rather than getting time to get the Tudus ready for mating and wonder what happened because they're not up to weight or they're not doing that well. You've actually looked at them pretty much every month of their life till they meet the ram. And this is just a tracking of the mixed age weights of the ewes, and it just reflects the extra weight put on by a pregnant twin ewe rather, that we have to really be conscious of high grade tucker. One, over mating to keep them increasing weight, and then when they're getting ready to lamb. And also putting a hand on them, condition scoring, and this is a nice one. If I'm snazzy enough I can back that off, but it just shows we're pretty proud we can keep the condition scores the same, even though those weights vary hugely, which is really imperative to maximise performance. The other obvious way, apart from increasing conception rates, is to decreasing land wastage. It's another ugly thing that people don't really like talking about, and it's not that good on an animal welfare front to add up how many lambs don't actually make it. But it's a potential gain. And you'll see once again the totus have come, they're the ones that with a real potential of gain coming through, and it just shows that ever declining wastage. As the weights increase, the wastage has come right down, which has increased the lambing performance. And then we also measure our mean daily lamb growth rate, which we had a real target of hitting 300, and we're pleased we've hit that. But it was a long way to travel from 180 grams a day. But it does just show you need a daily focus, I think, and keep it in the front of the mind. And also that's allowed us to wean early, which also has it has implications on the hill. We can unload the hill and have these great mixed legume base out there. Weaning early also has an environmental impact, and as much that the less time that they're on the property, it's the less environmental impact they have on the property. It adds up, and the less time they're around, the less parasitical challenge we have. So it just less is more. And I had an older mentor in South Africa when I went for a month over there, and he used to talk about the velocity dollar, and I think it always stuck with me that he said you don't talk about what dollars you get or anything, talk about how fast, or focused on how fast you can get that. And I think it was really valuable information, and just to keep the pedal down. This has meant that we get demand out the gate as production decreases through the year. In January we can really fall in a hole through nil growth, and where pivots will go on restrictions, often we have to work on that. So the pivots aren't 100% reliable, they're basically enhanced rainfall. And this also means that we can look after ewe lamb replacements better, and that then more in turn means that we'll have more likelihood of getting them to the ram. And this is just a graph reflecting the kilograms of lamb sold and days to sale. We've taken quite a drop there in 23-24, and that was due to the dry, but what I was really pleased about was that we managed to slaughter our way out of that, which isn't often done. There's not a lot of merino lambs sent to the works before, or able to be sent to the works before the winter, but we managed to do that, which was really, really good. And you see the black lines here at the start, we sold a lot of lamb store to realise the potential of our ewe flock and look after the ewes better. Then in 2016, we carried them right through, so that's why the days to sale increased when we got the pivots on board. But then we just kept putting the foot flat to see how many we could get out of there, because we always don't have any trouble looking after catering for extra tucker into ewes at the other end of winter. So the sooner those lambs can go, the better really, and get that velocity dollar and whack it in the bank. Not very long at all. So that's a real quick snack look at the financials, which is the bottom line as well, because your accountant, you couldn't really give a toss how fast your lambs are growing, or how good you think they were, or how nice you think everything looked. They're just interested in the finances, quite rightly, and your bank manager. And so it's nice to see it reflected through on that as well. The unsung heroes are the beef cows, and you'll see a declining arrow there. All our traditional beef cow country was lost when we went through tenure review and we freeholded. And so we didn't have any cattle country, but we kept the cattle herd on, and they're used as pasture groomers, which has meant in turn that they actually went from a bit of a side issue or a nice bonus in April when we weaned the calves to being a real earner and coming through with increased production. And this is the girls out there in the pivots, and this grooming, pasture grooming. This has increased production on them. Basically we've got another 70 tonne of lamb weaned. We've got 114 tonne extra lamb sold, and we've got 24 tonne extra calves taken to market, which has been really satisfying for myself and the bank manager. Quick shot, another fence line shot, and just showing the improvement of hill country on the right there. And that's what a wee snapshot of what grazing management can do. Totally Tim Rhodes, you'll be all over this. And it leads us back to our conclusion really, about the, and really it's that the early mission statement has thankfully reflected through, and our whole property trial has come through pretty strongly. But I really would like to sorry to I've overrun, but I really do can't thank Derek Moat and Pete Anderson enough, and really applaud for how well they've worked together. And I think that's the real gold in this country. If we can get different departments, scientists and vets and farmers working together, then we'll really hit home runs. Don't worry about claiming the accolades, just really get working together and everything else will speak for itself. And thanks for your time and thanks for your patience and listening. Thanks very much.